Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Grant Cohn, joined by Jack Hammer. And last couple of days, we've been talking about like the shifting narratives about the 49ers, particularly nationally, whether or not Kyle Shanahan started a war with these guys or if they were just protecting him in the past and feel no need to anymore. Anyway, it seems like today there's a report from NFL.com about him. A couple of days ago, there was one from CBS, and NBC just can't stop. So we'll go through it one by one and talk about the significance, starting with NFL.com, which really is the official news breaking organization of the 49ers. They are more plugged into the Niners organization than anyone else by far. And today there was a report. It's great how they do it. They buried it at the bottom, Jack. There was like 6 points on things to look for the Niners. Nick Bosa's return, George Kittle, the very bottom. Let me just read it real quick, and then I want to get your reaction. I talk about burying the lead. Okay, after being hit by a tsunami of injuries in 2020, expectations are again high for the 2019 NFC champs. The pressure to win is even higher. Shanahan now has had 4 years to fashion the roster to his liking, including mortgaging the future for Lance only 3 years after making Jimmy G the highest paid player in football. Missing the playoffs a fourth time in 5 years could put Shanahan on the hot seat in 2022. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's everything that they wrote right there is correct. It's something that I think that we've hit on at times, throughout this off season, and everything that the 49ers are doing and the way that they've approached this is all showing. It seems like they've got to win now. There's something that's going on that's pushing them to make some moves that are a little bit out of character. I understand the Garoppolo piece, but they've been looking to move from him all off season. So I definitely think there is something to this. I think there's some stuff going on between Shanahan and the front office that if they don't win this year, you're looking at now that'd be 5 out of 6 years, and I don't see how you can't put them on the hot seat if that happens.
Yeah, right. It's kind of a natural. I feel like there's been a lot of erratic behavior from both sides. Kyle Shanahan, Jed York, this offseason that it's been hard to explain. Why is Jed tweeting like this? Why is Kyle talking like this? What is going on? Wouldn't a lot of it be explained by a January meeting between Jed and Kyle where Jed said, hey, Kyle, you have to win this year. I just want you to know. Yeah. You have to win this year. No more excuses. Year 5. Wouldn't that explain a lot?
It definitely would. It would explain some, again, this is Jed York is out there. He's putting himself out there again because if you remember, even when the 49ers weren't good, he kept putting himself out there about how good they were going to be, even back in the days of Tom Sula and that whole crew. And I think it was actually Singletary. And it's continuing on now. The Yorks struggle with keeping head coaches for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. Shanahan's been here for 4 years. He's had one winning season.
He's their longest tenured coach ever.
Yes, this will begin the longest tenure. Yes, and he's only had 1 winning seasons out of that. So everything kind of points to there's some need, some pressure from above to get some W's on the board this year that haven't been happening the last few years, other than 2019.
The only thing I would wonder is they say he'd be on the hot seat if he misses the playoffs. Well, yeah, duh, I would think so. I mean, the only question is, would Jed fire him? I mean, probably not. They just gave him an extension, but this is Jed York we're talking about here, and the idea that he's changed a lot, he's had an awakening, he is more patient. I don't know how much people in their 40s really changed. Jack, you know more about that than me. I'm just saying, at a certain point, you are who you are, and it seems like Jed and his parents are pretty impatient. And if you got 1 winning season in 4 years, I don't know what that family will do. I don't think Kyle knows either.
Yeah, no, I think that he definitely has that pressure there, and the Yorks have shown that they're impatient. I mean, look at their history. They fired the first coach that they had. They fired him, despite going into the playoffs and winning a playoff game and getting into the second round with Mariucci. They fired, then they went through a bunch of bad coaches,
Mariucci, right? And then got rid of him within a few years. As soon as it went.
Yeah.
I mean, after a playoff season, they got rid of him.
Correct. That was
Yeah,
the season that they lost to Tampa Bay in the playoffs,
Tampa.
and they had beaten the
Yep.
Giants. Yeah, they'd beaten the Giants in the comeback the week before. There's a whole bunch that I think we're going to get on into a little bit further on down the line with regards to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think they're in win now mode, and if they don't, I can see Shanahan getting put on the hot seat. I don't think they're going to fire him after this year. I think if they make any moves in the front office, it's going to be with at the general manager level. And then they'll give Kyle one more year. I think they're going to do a little bit differently than they did back in 2014.
Also, Kyle Shanahan actually has said on the record this year that if anything were to happen, the Niners get a good deal, they should trade him. Remember he said that? No one's off limits. Hey, if they get a good deal from me, what Shanahan defenders or proponents often say is, hey, you get rid of Kyle, 25 teams lining up for his services. Okay, and if that's the case, then trade him. If it comes to that, if that's the case, then trade him. And he already said it. I wonder if something that Jed already said to him. Just know, Kyle, I would trade you. I will. I know you're worth something. We need some first round. Hey, I just figured out how the Niners can get some first round picks back, Jack.
Yeah, that's how they get back their picks. The picks that they just gave up for Trey Lance, right? They trade Kyle Shanahan, get a couple first round picks. They get all that back, and they're rebuilding again with the next new up and comer.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's like Jed says, "You better win now." Kyle says, "Okay, you better give me a new quarterback." Jed said, "Okay, you can trade up in the draft. You can use these picks, and if it doesn't work out, I'll use you to get the picks back. Deal. Fine. That's fair. That's fair. You can start over somewhere else, and we can start over here with the picks that you bring back with DeMeco Ryans and Mike McDaniel or Eric Bieniemy or whoever. Seems like a fair trade. I think the Niners are protected. Kyle Shanahan can always start over somewhere else. It seems like it's about time the stakes have been raised on Kyle. I like Kyle, but this is the big leagues, baby, and you have to win now. I think clearly Bill Walsh had the same start, three losing seasons in 4 years, but then he never lost again. So let's go.
Right. Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And he's, up to this point, Shanahan's been living off the everything that he did prior. He's really lived off that 2016 season with Atlanta.
Yes.
That's where everybody has this whole narrative of him. You and I have talked about this so much about his past and how it's not as great, I think, as some people want to point to. So
yeah,
I think it's definitely win now, and that what you just had there as far as up on the screen a minute ago that you took off there. I think the fans are starting to possibly realize that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Shanahan's history, it's long, and there are some big highs, but they're inconsistent. It's like every 3 or 4 years he has a very good offense, but they can't keep it going. You could say he hasn't had a quarterback. Well, he's got one now. He's got to make it work.
Yeah, you can say he didn't have a quarterback, but look at what they did and pulled off in Pittsburgh in 2019 True. When they didn't have a quarterback. They were 8-8. They were in the playoffs race until the end of the season. They never imploded the way that this team has imploded every season, with the exception of 2019.
And to that previous person's point, once the fans stop pushing back against criticism, the criticism multiplies. You know what I mean? If people feel like fans want to read that, then it's an avalanche. And it seems like the thought that fans feeling that Kyle Shanahan was this close to taking Mac Jones has really shaken a lot of fans' confidence in him. And I think that's what Shanahan was so upset about at that press conference. Like, man, people really don't believe in me the way they used to. All about this, and people are coming up to me in a Safeway and telling me, "Don't do it, Kyle." Yeah, people look at him differently now, man. They really do.
And that whole thing's just so crazy too on that. But we've talked about the whole Mac Jones thing so much, but even just the whole way that whole narrative and everything, that was really wild, real wild.
It is
this offseason.
But it's just real quick. I mean, it's wild to think that so much of Shanahan's reputation is still based on 2016. Like, that was 5 years ago. Name me another coach who has gotten more out of one season. 5 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, Doug Peterson has won a Super Bowl and gotten fired in that time period.
Oh yeah, and you hear people talk all the time. Oh, if they just execute. At some point, it's the coach's job to get their team to execute. Every coach that's ever been fired could say the same thing. I had a great plan. My team just didn't execute. And you could do that with every coach that's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, that's the excuse when you get fired. They didn't execute. Absolutely. Anyway, Double B Studio says we have the firepower. The 49ers need to have a plan if they don't already, and execute. By the end of the year, we will have questions answered. Yeah, Niner fans are real skeptical. If this is, I'm telling you, people, it's how I felt about Jimmy last year. I thought Niner fans would be skeptical of Jimmy after the Super Bowl, and they had his back, but after one bad week one, it was over. And I feel like Niner fans are right there with Kyle Shanahan. They're still supporting him, but if he loses to Detroit week one, oh my God, the stuff people are, not me, the stuff fans are, they're going to go on my Twitter during the game and say, Grant, please, after the game, go crazy. You already know. Kyle, don't test it. Jed is very emotional. These fans are very emotional. And support that you've enjoyed for 4 years could go in September. Don't
especially against Dan Campbell and everything that's, all the kind of the jokes and everything about his press conferences. If they lose to Detroit in week one, that would be just a tsunami, as they said right there. Forget the tsunami of injuries. That's just going to be a tsunami of people getting frustration with that loss if that's what happens.
Anyway, high stakes. I love it. Kyle Shanahan, you should love it too. You should be able to. This should bring the best out of him. Because the last time I thought 2019 was a win now year for him. It's a win now year for any coach who started his career with 2 losing seasons, and it definitely brought the best out of him. So let's see it, Kyle. All right, more people that don't believe in you and the 49ers. NFL.com. It's not that they didn't believe in the Niners. They're just setting the bar really high. And I wonder who is setting the bar high. Is it Jed? Is it Parag? Is it the entire front office? They want you to know that the expectations are through the roof and Kyle better deliver. Well, CBS is over here saying, not so fast. The Niners have the most overrated team in the NFL. Here's what they say. Okay, if everything goes right for the 49ers in 2021, they could easily win the Super Bowl. That said, when does every piece perfectly falling into place happen for any NFL team? The Niners are currently tied for the 4th best odds to win the Super Bowl and are tied for the 2nd best odds to win the NFC. That's wild. And then they go on to point out, they don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. That's a pretty good point. When you look at it that way, just the betting odds, how much of the public has faith in this team? Do you agree that they're the most overrated team in the NFL?
Well, the first part of it, before answering your question, is CBS is also the organization that was pretty harsh on the 49ers roster as a whole, if you remember, right?
Yeah, that's the more important point. It's just another major news organization sniping, taking a shot.
Yeah, they'd come out, but I can understand where you're saying that the 49ers are overrated. You don't know who your quarterback is going to be. Is it going to be Garoppolo? Is it going to be Lance? You keep playing this chess, whatever you want to call it, with that decision. You've got a secondary that's pretty good if they stay healthy, but when is Jason Verrett's never played a full season in his career, and he's never played back-to-back full seasons, close to full seasons in his career. I like what Jaquiski Tartt brings to the table at strong safety, but he's played about as many games as Jimmy Garoppolo in the last 4 years. So. The 3 most important players in the team, other than quarterbacks, arguably are Jason Verrett, George Kittle, Nick Bosa. Who knows what you're going to get from those 3 guys this year? Sure, and Nick Bosa, even as I understand, he was the NFL Rookie of the Year in 2019. He only had 9 sacks at the end of the day. He had 9 sacks. Yep. And so to expect him to come off of the knee injury and come out and be at 10, 11, 12 sacks, that doesn't make sense to me. You're hoping that he returns to the guy that made 9 sacks is I think what the expectation should be for Bosa. Also with Kittle, his injury last year was freaky. He was running, he broke his foot, missed half the year. What was that? How do you avoid that? How do you say that that's not going to happen again? We don't really talk about that very much. George Kittle needs to be on the field for his blocking alone. Yep, and that's the other injury. That's the one guy who has kind of skated by with his injury issues over the last couple of years, right? He did miss a lot of time last year. He had Kittle had that injury week 1 with the high throw by Garoppolo that took him out. I know he played a little bit more in the rest of that game, but he was out for a few weeks after that. And then he had the injury against the Seahawks up in Seattle when he went up to make the catch along the sidelines on that high throw on the throw by Bowens. So, yeah, he's a guy who has not shown that he can be healthy throughout the whole season. So their best players. When you look at the 49ers' best players, they all have injury concerns.
Debo, Ayuk too, Mostert. I mean,
yep.
Geez, yeah.
Yeah, it's across the board, and so I can understand why they might say that the 49ers are a little overrated. I think the 49ers have a pretty good team. If they're healthy, they're good. I think they have a really good team. But like CBS said, the likelihood that they're going to stay healthy all season, just that's not likely.
Well, again, if they didn't have Trey Lance and their quarterback was Jimmy Garoppolo, I would be saying this is a team that's going to miss the playoffs. He's going to get hurt. They're going to miss the playoffs. Kyle's going to get fired. But they have Trey Lance, and I really like Trey Lance. And I think that if he starts, they could actually win 12 games. He could actually protect himself. He doesn't have those injury issues. Carson Wentz got injured coming from that school, but he got injured at North Dakota State too. Remember that?
Yes, he did.
He missed the second part of his final season, some broken bone. So that hasn't been part of Trey Lance's history. Maybe he can stay healthy in way like Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't. And if he does, then the Niners, even with the revolving door at other positions, could be a winning team.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of what we saw in 2019, right? We saw injuries at other positions,
big time.
But they always had, but they were able to kind of. It wasn't like they had a lot of them at one time. They were kind of spread out throughout the season.
That's true.
Their quarterback was healthy throughout. And they also had some of those injuries in the first half, and that first half of 2019 was really soft, especially as the season started rolling. It didn't look like it was going to be soft when the schedule came out, but then you have the Roethlisberger go down at Pittsburgh, and just the way everything kind of broke for the 49ers at the first half of 2019 was perfect for them. It allowed them to get off to a fast start, and they kind of limped their way through the second half of the season. If you remember, they were only 5-3 in the second half once they started playing the better teams.
Got a bonus question here from fellow All 49ers writer Warun Pereira. He says, how have the Niners lost 14 of 17 games against the Seahawks the last 8 years? I have a theory. You want to hear it? It's two words.
Yeah, I think I know what it is.
Russell Wilson. I think that's a big thing. And that's why I think Trey Lance is so exciting, is because to really contend with this team in Seattle, you got to have something similar to that up there. That's why Colin Kaepernick was exciting. That's why Trey Lance is exciting. Jimmy Garoppolo is decent, but it's not enough. And he beat him once. Good for Jimmy. Beat him once.
Yeah, he beat him once. He beat him the one. He beat him once. No, he beat him once. The only win that he had was the game up in Seattle at the end of 2019.
That's true.
The win that you're thinking. I think the win you're thinking about in 2018 was Mullins that beat him at home on the kickoff return.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think when you look at the 49ers and Seattle,
49ers just made too many. Ever beat them?
He did. He beat them in 2012.
Shows what I know.
Second game. It was 2012 or 2013, whatever. 2013. They played them at Candlestick at the end of 2013, and they beat them there.
There you go. Thanks for setting the record straight. All right, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, but that's it's not a problem. I just think that what happens, the reason is Russell Wilson and the way that the way that the Seahawks play football is that they force you to be consistent on offense.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to drive the ball down the field on them. They kind of play soft. They don't let you really make big plays against them. You've got to make play after play after play.
True.
Teams can't. They just wait until you make the mistake.
Right, because less practice time the last 10 years, just less precise offenses. So they just play the percentages, don't give them the big play, make them kind of grind it out. And that's why they had trouble against the Patriots, because that's what Tom Brady can freaking do. Yeah,
exactly. And that's partly why when they played the 49ers, when Harbaugh was here, those games were always tight. Yeah. And they had a little bit of success against them because that's the way the 49ers were playing at that point too. They were both very similar teams in the way they approached the game.
Niners' problem back then was third down.
Sure.
Their quarterback wasn't quite good enough to convert third downs at a high rate. And I guess that's Jimmy Garoppolo's thing, or it was, but his problem is turnovers.
It was. I mean, he was absolutely awful this year. When he played up there.
God.
This year, that game was really bad.
It was really alarming how bad he played in that game, and then how well Nick Mullins played for that quarter. I mean, just showed you that it wasn't like a great defense he was facing. That was back when Seattle had like the worst defense in the league. It improved. They got Carlos Dunlap, Jamal. I don't think Jamal Adams played in that game, did he? I don't know. I've been wrong about everything so far. He might have
I'm not
played
sure,
in the game.
but I'm not sure. But I mean, you're right in that they showed. I mean, shoot, look what happened when the 49ers went and they played against Seattle in the last game of the season, or second to last, whatever it was. I mean, they were right with them the whole game with freaking C.J. Beathard as their quarterback.
That's true. That's true.
So.
That's true. Yep. All right. So we've got NFL, CBS, now NBC really taking it personal. I guess Kyle Shanahan made it personal, really calling out Mike Florio by name. So Florio had an 8-minute video in response. What did you think of Florio? He said Kyle Shanahan's talking too much, and the stuff he's saying isn't making sense. He's going around, or it's not that it's not making sense, but it's basically disrespectful to Jimmy Garoppolo. You're making it clear that you want every quarterback available, and yet you still have Jimmy on the team. Why? What's the deal here? What did you think of what Florio said?
Well, when I heard Florio's comments, I was like, well, I don't really hear anything that we haven't really been talking about.
That's
true.
With
this situation is that it's all offseason we've been hearing about every quarterback that came around they were interested in, and it's proven out throughout the course of the offseason. And I don't understand why Shanahan would go out there, and there's no need to put the fact that you wanted Matthew Stafford out there. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for him to put any of that stuff out there on the table. And I really think that Florio hit the nail on the head with the whole way he's done it. I think there's a lot of what Shanahan's done is isolated Garoppolo. He's kind of put the organization in a little bit of a bind here with that quarterback, and I think it's going to make things really interesting in 2021. In about a month here.
I mean, it's an interesting response. I think it's a fair response to the Flying Coach podcast. What do you think Jed York's response was when he listened to the whole thing and heard? What do you think it was?
I think he's probably like, why are you talking about this? Why are you going?
How did this help the 49ers? Yeah.
Exactly. What's the use of you doing this? This makes no sense. We're in a position where we have a quarterback who we're paying all this money to.
Yeah.
We just got our face of our quarterback of the future. If their goal is to eventually move Garoppolo out of San Francisco and get anything for him, you've just shot the heck out of that because everybody knows you don't want him and don't think anything of him. So I think he could be very, very frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think it's possible that he was sending like a shot to Jed York? Like, I know you're going to be listening to this, so let me just remind you that, by the way, the 49ers weren't my first choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That weren't my first choice. He really said that.
Yeah, and that part of that whole discussion is a totally different topic from the part with the quarterbacks. I mean, coming out and actually saying I didn't really want that. I didn't want to. This isn't where I wanted to be. This is an organization that's put all of their faith and everything in you, and for you to say that you didn't really want to come here, that's not. I don't think that's not smart business, really.
I think he's sending a message to. He knows Jed York's going to hear it, and I think when he says that, first of all, I'm sure he premeditated that. I'm sure he got the questions beforehand and figured out where he wanted to go. And I'm sure I think Jed York should remember. I think everyone else should remember that I'm doing the Niners a freaking favor by being here, right?
Yeah. It's really, to me, when I kind of have been thinking over this situation, and I don't know if this is a topic that we're going to hit on later, but this whole thing seems really similar to what happened with Steve Mariucci back in early 2000s when they moved on from him, whatever point that was. Because what happened was there was kind of becoming a power struggle between Mariucci and the front office at that point. And Mariucci was the Yorks. Yeah. And I think Terry Donahue, might have been here at that point, was starting to take more responsibility from Walsh. And I think that he was trying to get that power from him. And part of the way that he was going about getting power was he was buying favor with the media. He was getting really tight with the media and getting them on his side. And John York didn't like that. And that was one of the reasons why there was a lot of friction at the end of that season. I can remember, I kind of remember hearing talk about this even before the game against Tampa Bay about how that in that season about how there was everything that I'm saying about John York not being happy with Steve Mariucci, didn't like his friendship with that he had grown up with the media, and that was the whole source of their friction. And you're seeing that now with Kyle Shanahan. He's getting really buddy with what he's saying, or he's getting loose lips in the media. And I understand that he's kind of, some of the bigger national, bigger media, he's kind of thrown some monkey wrenches at them over the last time. But he's out there at the same time letting a lot of things fly that he probably shouldn't be doing.
Well, maybe he feels that someone internally leaked the Mac Jones stuff, and maybe he's bitter about that. I mean, who knows how deep this goes? But it seems to me that Jed, I don't know, like Jed York could really be ending this relationship soon. I don't know.
I think
he just doesn't have a history of long-term relationships. You know what I mean? It's a skill.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have if they lose this year, that's going to be like we said at the beginning of this thing, five losing seasons or 4 losing seasons out of 5 years. That's not acceptable. I don't know what pro franchise would be okay with that beyond even forget the 49ers. Just really any franchise would be okay with that.
And I think what happens is it's not just that like the coach starts talking to the media. I think what happens is when the breakup's coming, especially with the Yorks are going to talk, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we know that they leak somehow, and they have very influential people they leak to and talk to. So that's when I feel like you see the coaches or the general managers, whoever, start getting their allies in the media and trying to get their story out there, because if they don't, they're the Yorks will be running unopposed. I think you see that a little bit. So I'm always skeptical. When a coach starts talking a lot, I think you're weak. What's going on here? Why are you talking? When you were strong, you were chilling on your own, saying nothing because you didn't have to. I don't know. Jim Harbaugh became a big fan of my dad in 2014, right when his relationship with York was going to hell. It's nice to have my dad as a local ally. My dad was pretty vicious against people he didn't like, and if you could turn him against Jed York, that wasn't bad. It seemed like a smart move. He had my dad going crazy on Jed York about the grass back in 2014. Back before then, Jim Harbaugh didn't care about making allegiances in the media. It was beneath him. But then he did,
right?
And then it felt. So I'm just saying, guys, we've seen this before. Mariucci, Harbaugh.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you're right. That whole thing in 2014 there was definitely a lot of stuff going on, from the stadium issues to the 49ers were, the report that they had tried to trade Harbaugh before to Cleveland.
To Cleveland.
Yeah, that whole thing is just really wild. So
yeah, and remember before week 1, they played in Dallas, and there was a report the day of the game, before the game started, from Ian Rappaport that Harbaugh had lost the locker room. They won the game. They lost the locker room, though. Remember that?
Yeah, I do. That was prior to the game.
That was amazing.
And that's just wild. Yeah. And that's the stuff that comes from, again, that was from a national media guy, and most of the time that national media stuff comes from the front office, not from the coaches.
Yep, that's right. Double B Studio says most importantly is your background a corner, walls, or a poster board? Wall, roll up poster thing, corner. Yeah, it's a good question. Do you need to get that? Do you need the door?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay, I got you. All right, go ahead. I'm going to answer this question. Hold on. Let me get this thing out of my face. All right. If Kyle and John leave, who fills the job? Well, that's a good question. I mean, they could just promote D'Amico Ryans to head coach and promote Mike McDaniel if they want to keep everything the same, or if they want to overhaul everything and bring in a coach who has a history of developing quarterbacks. You could go with the guy in Buffalo, Brian Daboll, or the guy in Kansas City who just blew the Super Bowl, Eric Bieniemy. I don't know. Let me get Jack in here. Jack, the question is, if Kyle Shanahan leave, who fills the job? I was saying you could stay in-house, promote D'Amico Ryans, who Fred Warner says is a head coach in waiting, and just keep everything the same, kind of like they did with Tom Sula, or just bring in someone like Brian Daboll, who's had history developing a quarterback?
Yeah, I kind of heard a little bit at the end of that. Yeah, I think, Bieniemy would be a surefire guy that would be very much in the same mold as Kyle Shanahan, a guy that's had a lot of success on offensive side of the ball, right? I think you'd be seeing. I don't think the DeMeco Ryans would be a guy that they'd want to promote after one season as a coordinator, but Daboll fits their mold as far as his running, the way that he runs his offense, and the amount of running that he likes to do, and the way that he's brought along Josh Allen, and Bieniemy, kind of the same thing. He's got that. He's got the coaching tree, that part of it, with Andy Reid. So that's, makes sense there. And then the other part of that question is John Lynch. And I think they already have John Lynch's replacement in house and Adam Peters. So, I don't think it's quite as difficult to replace these guys as people maybe are trying to make it out to be.
Yeah, and again, I think that they would, if they were to get rid of Kyle Shanahan this year, what they probably would do is promote DeMeco Ryan. I'm just calling it right now. Promote DeMeco Ryans, keep everything the same, and just push Kyle Shanahan out. That's pretty much what they did with Harbaugh, except they blew it and pushed out Fangio too. God knows how they figured that one out. Had they kept Fangio, they might have had a chance. Because what happened was, I feel like Jed York's thinking was, this team is good. Anyone can coach this team. Harbaugh, I don't need this. Like, let's just keep the team the same. Had they kept Fangio, it might have worked. They kept Tom Sula, half the team retired. They're like, you know what? No, we don't want to play for him. And the team sucked. Had they kept Fangio, I'm curious to see if Justin Smith and Patrick Willis, maybe Patrick Willis couldn't have gone anymore. But would Justin Smith have ever retired? I don't know. Anthony Davis?
I think Justin Smith was on his way out already.
Okay.
So I think he was probably going to go. But, the ones – not only that, but what it hurt was you got the Hall of Fame kind of guys like Justin Smith and Patrick Willis going. But on top of that, you have the linebacker out of Wisconsin. Remember him? He was a rookie, and Orland had a heck of a rookie season in 2014, and he said, "Heck, I'm out of here," too. And yeah, that whole you're 100% right when you say that the thought was that anybody can coach this team. There was reports that had been said by the organization. That I don't know if it was York or who necessarily said it, but there were reports out of national media again that this team could win games with anybody coaching them, and that whole situation came down to York choosing to trust in Trent Baalke, and I think there was a lot of from everything as you start looking back. I think so much of that was coming out of Baalke, really.
Yeah, there's no question about it. But I just want to, before we move on, I want to say that my prediction is if the Niners move on from Kyle Shanahan, the replacement will be DeMeco Ryans. I don't know why I feel that way. I just feel very strongly that that's what's going to happen if it comes to that. Barry Baller 18 says hard to win with scrub backups. I think he's talking about Kyle Shanahan. That's a good excuse for year 1, year 2, even year 4 in the pandemic, but it's over. Year 5, it's your team. You had a blank canvas, win, make it work.
Yeah, again, go back to last year. There was no reason for the 49ers to be a 6-10 team. It just wasn't. There were so many times that you go back and you watch those games and you're like, why are we doing some of these things that are leading to why when we have Nick Mullins playing quarterback, why is Nick Mullins being asked to run this offense at a higher level than what you're asking Jimmy Garoppolo to do? And you're asking him to do that without Deebo Samuel, without Raheem Mostert, without George Kittle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're still asking him to air the ball out down the field and whatnot.
Yeah. And now he's recovering from an elbow operation. A lot of questions. All right, moving on. Is Kyle Shanahan creating a quarterback controversy, in your opinion, the way he's being so candid with his entire thought process of the offseason in a way that we know Jim Harbaugh would not have been?
Yeah, well, definitely he is. He's been very open about the fact that we mentioned it already. He's been very open about wanting to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo throughout this. He's named names now. So there's definitely quarterback controversy, I think, within this organization, and you're seeing it every day. Just now that with the fact that we have Twitter, you're seeing this argument constantly by fans. There's Jimmy, there's Trey, and no matter who they go with, there's going to be there's going to be a lot of pressure on that guy to win.
Yeah, because it seems like the team's narrative is like, look, this is still Jimmy's team until he, gets benched or doesn't play, until he doesn't play well and gets hurt. Basically, it's still his team. And it seems like Kyle's narrative is, no, it's Trey's team, and he's going to play whenever he's ready, regardless of what Jimmy's doing, which is very interesting. And it seems like he keeps trying to hammer that home, like, just so you know, I wanted Matthew Stafford. Just so you know, like, the only reason Jimmy Garoppolo is still on this team is because I can't give Trey Lance the go-ahead just yet, but I'm dying to, itching to.
Yeah.
That's swear.
Yeah, no, he wants to go. He wants to go in that direction. It's clear, and the quarterback controversy thing isn't a bad deal. If you go back to 1988, and I think I mentioned to you about this before we got on, was Bill Walsh openly created that quarterback controversy before the 88 season, after from 87 going to 88, and he did that in training camp. There's interviews of him saying, yeah, we have a quarterback controversy. We don't know who our quarterback's going to be right now. Joe looks pretty good. Steve looks pretty good. So he was open about that whole thing. And in a lot of ways, I think that hurt that team. I know they ended up winning the Super Bowl in the end, but the reason they ended up winning the Super Bowl was because they got to the point in the season where it was a breaking point where they were 6-5, and it was like the game's got to stop. Montana's the quarterback, and then they just run the table from there, and they win the Super Bowl. And then Walsh retires, and once Walsh retired after 88, it was Montana's team from there.
Yeah. It seems to me, though, from Kyle Shanahan's perspective, like he may have more rope if Trey starts. Because let's go back to our premise that somehow it's been communicated to him that he's on the hot seat if he loses. This year doesn't make the playoffs. Doesn't make the playoffs. I mean, he could go 9-8, have a winning season, not make the playoffs, be on the hot seat. If he goes 9-8 with Jimmy Garoppolo and doesn't play Trey Lance, it could be easier to hot seat him, to fire him, than if he went 9-8 with Trey Lance. It seems like anytime you go to the younger quarterback, you extend your timeline theoretically, because if you go 9-8 with the rookie, it's like, well, not exactly what we hope, but he showed a lot of good things, and things are only gonna be better next year, right?
No. Well, I think regardless, I think the seat would be hotter if he did that with Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think even if they go out there and they go 9, if he decides that he wants to run with Trey Lance, I think it's still going to be hot because you gave up all this draft capital for him, and whatever. We talked about the fan base has an affinity for Jimmy Garoppolo, and if you don't win with Trey Lance, it's going to be you made the wrong decision here, and it's your fault.
There's a lot of people waiting to say that.
Yes, that's you've got about half the fan base that's ready to say, "See, you blew it," and you got the other half that's ready to say you made the right choice, right?
That's true.
So the way that this whole thing's
God knows how the locker room split up when you think about it.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one to hear.
Hard to know.
It seems like everybody's kind of praising Trey Lance now, right? There's definitely been a shift in that whole thing throughout the off season since the draft. There's definitely been a shift into people seeming in the locker room seemingly buying more into Trey Lance. So it comes down to what happens in August here. If Lance shows that he's even close to what Garoppolo, and he's starting to move the ball down the field or hit those balls down the field more, you're going to see that the guys on the offense wanting to make that change.
Yeah, I would think so. Athletes want the best athletes to play. This is the way it goes. Mm-hmm. All right, enough quarterback stuff. Let's talk Jimmy Ward. We've talked about him a lot. He came on my show. He was really nice. He also he's been doing a very good job of explaining why he's good. I feel like he's learned from Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman's one of the best self-promoters I've covered, and I think he really made himself a lot of money. Because I think what Richard Sherman understood is if he doesn't promote himself, no one will. The media won't necessarily, the team won't necessarily. And Jimmy Ward has seen that, and he's saying, you know what, I'm going to do it. And we're learning that he has this really cool personality to go with it. But he's making a real strong case that he is the coverage master at safety. He's the guy who covers like a corner at safety and hits like a safety. Do you see him differently after hearing his sales pitch for himself?
Well, my favorite thing about the whole, I mean, the interview was great. So let me just put that out there
Thank
first.
you.
That was a terrific interview, and just heard so many things coming out of him. And one of the biggest things that he was talking about for me was how he had to play all these different positions. And
Right.
he's played, since he got here, he was drafted as a safety, but they threw him in at slot corner. He's played quarterback, corner. They've moved him all around, and then finally it just seems like, since the Harbaugh regime got here, they finally realized that this guy's a free safety, and they're playing him in the right spot.
If you think about it, they
So
made him start at nickel on a team that had gone to 3 straight NFC championship games. They're like, you play that position right now and do it as well as Carlos Rogers because we need to win. That was tough. And he even said, look,
yeah.
I never earned that job. Rookie. Never. That's interesting.
Yeah, I just was I was thrown in there because they needed me to, because they didn't have anybody else. And he's completely right on that whole thing. He was thrown into really a no-win situation when he first got here, and that's what they did with him. They put him in one of the toughest positions to play on the defense, and expected him to go out and play like a veteran.
And that's why the perception of him was so low. It was like the first round pick. Oh, look at him get beat by Brandon Marshall. He's not a nickelback. Well, no. And then they put him at corner. He's not a corner. Well, no. I mean, he didn't even get a chance until he was like 27 to do what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But all that, the thing is, all that stuff and moving around is put him in the position to where he is now, where he's so valuable to the team because he can do so many things. He's best as a free safety, but he has that ability to come up and play in the box. He has the ability to play in the slot and cover those guys and do everything. Mm-hmm. And he does it at a really high level. My only thing, and I'll say this, is that I've always thought that Ward's a good player. I think that he makes a good, he does his job as a free safety. My only knock on Jimmy Ward is that he doesn't get the turnovers that you would like to see from a guy that's at that position. And so that's been my only knock on him. And I know that he throws out a lot of different reasons for it, as far as because they're moving him around so much, and that's a big part of it. And I agree. I've looked at it in the past, and the 49ers run the Seattle scheme, and Earl Thomas had interceptions, every year. He was almost, more
Andre Diggs up there.
Yeah, and yet you don't see that out of Ward. So that's the only negative in his game is the lack of the turnovers. And I know, he had a couple of games last year where he did a good job of forcing turnovers, but you go back to like that Saints game, and he had an opportunity for a turnover that would have been a big deal at that point in the game that he didn't convert on, right? On that ball over the middle where he gets up and he has a jump kind of high, but he gets both hands on the ball and he doesn't bring it in. That was a big point in that game. Niners were behind, I think, at that point, but it was still close. And that's my only knock on Jimmy Ward. But his value to the defense is really high because he does so much, and he allows everybody else to be able to, in a way, be put into specific roles that makes it easier for them as well.
Yes.
Hope I'm making sense there.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think you really summed up his value really well. I think what's interesting about him, what his distinction was that like he's been forced to play outside corner, so that's one thing that he can do that no one else can do. He has all these experiences, but he also made the point like, I'm not experienced playing single high. That was interesting to me. I always thought he had the skill set to be great at it, but he pointed out like, I didn't do that in college. I played quarters in college, played nickel, played corner, and then finally when it's time to play in the post, he didn't really know what he was doing. He was like, I'm backpedaling against a quick game, and it got guys like Jaquiski Tartt being like, what the hell are you doing? What I was like, my question with Ward is, how can you never be around the ball playing single high? It just seems like you should be. And whatever reason, you're reacting late. And I think he was saying is like, yeah, I was reacting. I'm new to that position. And actually, Jaquiski Tartt is a better feel for it, or initially did. And they don't even run as much single high anymore. When they do, it's often Tartt, which is what I've noticed. It's kind of interesting. Maybe as they play more split safety stuff, he might break quicker. He might be a little more instinctual from two-man cover 4 type stuff than cover 3. I don't know. Yeah,
well, he's growing into.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's growing into the role, and it's going to be fun to see him in this season in 2021? Because it sounds like they've got some plans for him to be a little bit more aggressive and do some of those things that some of these other safeties are being asked to do that he hasn't been in the past. At least that's kind of, from some of the things that I've heard him say, it sounds like that's. I think he mentioned that during his press conference that he had during OTAs that, he was asking to be able to do some of those things a little more often.
I have a theory. I think he's going to be in coverage again this year, and I think he wants more targets. I think he feels like just locking a guy down and forcing the ball another way isn't going to get him to the Pro Bowl. So what he needs to do is talk a lot of shit and almost goad teams into throwing at him so he can get more action. I think that's what he's trying to do. I think he's that confident. I think he's saying, if I talk enough shit, people will finally throw my way. I think that might be something. Might be something to that.
Yeah, that definitely could be because you've seen him get put down in those situations. I know he talked about like the Rams going after him all the time, and he's played really well against the Rams when he's been, you go back to that game when they played the Rams down in LA in 2019. I mean, he was a monster in the slot against the slot receiver and the tight end. So yeah, keep talking that stuff. Get the coaches, try to get in their head, try to get in the quarterback's head. And I think he is in the last year of his contract too, right? So. Yeah,
I think he's got one more, but I think he's got one more. I think he signed a 3-year deal.
Oh, you're right. He did.
But what I think he's saying is he wants all the smoke, Jack. I think he wants all of the smoke.
Yeah,
I respect.
Bring it all on. Start throwing it at me because that's how I'm gonna make more money. That's how I'm gonna get put on these ratings.
Right.
Because he's a really good corner free safety who belongs to be in that conversation among the top 10 safeties in the league. His name usually doesn't come up, and the reason it doesn't come up is because he's not getting the highlight reel plays. He makes your solid tackles and plays down the field, but he doesn't make that. He's not making the interception and the stuff that ends up on.
And I'm sure he's thinking, I don't get the opportunity, so if I run my mouth enough, maybe I will. I think it's brilliant. I mean, it never really worked for Richard Sherman though. Richard Sherman would talk, and people would be like, "Yeah, he's right. We're not throwing over there." For a decade, it was amazing. Double B Studio says, this is my first question ever. He's shy. Yeah, Love the show. Gotta go. I'll catch the rest of the show later. But when you going to interview the next player? I don't know. I want to let this Jimmy Ward one breathe for a minute because it was so good and no one can top this. So I don't want anyone to come in and have to have that. It's like following Chardal. It's tough. You know what I'm saying? So I'll let it breathe. I'm going on vacation. I'm going to be gone this weekend. So a couple weeks. But I'm not going to let you wait too long. That's tough. That's a tough act to follow, man. He's good.
Yeah, that was a really good one. He just he brings so much energy and different stuff. It was really interesting to hear him talk about playing for, what was he playing for? Cheese fries. And that whole conversation. That was
how to get into football. Well, I love cheese fries, and that was really how I was enticed to play at first. I got cheese fries if I played. Well, thank God for cheese fries. I used to get cheese fries in middle school. People would line up before school and before lunch to get the cheese fry. They're hella good. If you haven't had cheese fries, they're hella good.
Simple. Oh yeah, cheese fries are good. The thing for me was when I was in school was cheese bread. It was French bread, and they slice it and they put a little butter, but big old piece of American cheese on there. And then if you wanted to pay an extra 25 cents, you get a little cup of nacho cheese to dip that in. Cheese all day long.
That sounds terrific. All right, guys, that's the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for giving me your time, Jack. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
I'm going to jump over onto Twitch right now if you want to continue the discussion. It'll be a group discussion with my Discord VIPs. If you want to get in that, you know how to do it. You got to subscribe. Anyway, I'll be on Twitch. You can watch and participate. See you then. Thank you, everyone.